I couldn't tell if I had passed out and I was now dreaming, or if I had finally died. But the next thing I knew, I was waking up in a completely white void. I opened and closed my hands a couple of times, testing if I could move my body. Thankfully I could. I pushed myself into a sitting position and felt my body where the wounds had been just a moment ago. But as far as I could tell, they were completely gone. Even my clothes, which had been torn open from the claws, were patched back together. Concluding that I was probably dead and had nothing better to do, I started looking around, actually taking in my surroundings. The white void that at first I thought was empty was actually pretty occupied. By me. Directly ahead of me, about 15 feet away, sat me. And behind that, sat another, and another. The row of me went on as far as I could see. After a moment of awkward eye contact with myself, I tried speaking to it. Hello? Excuse my lack of eloquence, but what the hell? The other me moved its mouth in unison with mine. I raised my hand and waved. An assembly line of hands raised and waved back. And I looked to my left and right, where there were lines of me leading away in both directions. Both lines mimicked my moves, making them look away. The same thing happened when I looked over my shoulder. A row of me looking behind them sat there. Enjoying yourself? I turned my head back to look ahead at the person who had just spoken. In front of me sat a man in one of those nice, cushiony chairs. He wore a fancy white suit jacket, white dress pants, white undershirt, and a red rose was pinned over his breast pocket. He had platinum blonde hair put up into a humble pompadour. He looked to be in his mid-20s and had a very young CEO vibe about him. His eyes seemed to be pools of constantly shifting colors. One moment bright blue, the next moment they were the deepest brown I had ever seen. Sometimes they lost all color in general, the iris turning into a reflective surface around the pupils. I looked around the chair, trying to see if he had been put into the rows of reflections, but somehow, he just wasn't there. I just saw the same rows of me being reflected. He started tapping his finger against the arm of the chair impatiently, as he waited for my answer. Oh, sorry, I forgot what we were talking about. What did you say? I asked. It wasn't until the day after this conversation that I remembered what he had asked, because he didn't repeat himself. Instead, he continued tapping the arm of his chair in a very impatient manner, as if he were trying to tell me that he had better things to do than whatever this was. Mason, he said, his voice oozing with condescension. I was already starting not to like this guy, and I just met him. You have to die, and it would be better for everyone if you just let it happen tonight. Okay, now I knew I didn't like him. Excuse me, I started. I may not exactly remember what you said, yet, but I'm pretty sure that wasn't it. Listen, Mason, it's for the benefit of everyone if you were to die. Don't take such personal offense to it. How am I not supposed to take that personally? And why is it so important that I die anyways? He sighed. This really is taking longer than it should. Why are humans so selfish, always refusing to die for the betterment of the world? His eyes shifted away for just a moment before returning back to me. You know, if I had a nickel for every time someone called me selfish for not dying, I would have at least 20 cents. Which is a lot more than I feel like anyone should have. Wait. Are you the one that sent the cultist after us? He paused before responding, as if considering his words. Mason, I'm sure you've noticed some anomalies with the people who have been coming and going through your little town over these past few weeks. Yeah, a giant greasy guy came through the other day riding a cow. Said he was looking for a place where the sanctioned love of man and beast was accepted, but I don't see what that has to do with this. He looked at me for a long, awkward amount of time. I got the feeling that this wasn't what he was referring to. That was not at all what I was referring to. Perhaps letting myself die is worth ridding the universe of such a useless species. He said that last part absent-mindedly. What I was referring to are the reflections of people that have been coming back to your... He waved a hand in the air at nothing in particular. Establishment. Such as Zach Cooper, the man who attempted to end your life because you gave him useful directions. Oh yeah, I did think that was a little weird, but not the strangest reason someone's had for wanting me dead. So you're saying you sent him after me? Now you're getting it. I created reflections of the partial nudist, Zach, and now the cultist. They were all sent to your motel with the intentions of ending your life. So when you say reflections, there's something like duplicates? He seemed extremely put off by that question. I really don't know how to handle you. You seem to be taking interest in the smaller, unimportant parts and asking about those. Have you realized that I haven't answered why I'm trying to kill you yet? But you're asking about the intricacies of my reflections. Oh yeah, that's probably important to know. Thanks for getting us back on top. Do not interrupt me. he demanded, his cool persona from before seemingly being thrown aside for the time being. You asked about the reflections, so that's the question that I'll answer. Okay. For some reason, my compliance didn't calm him down whatsoever. I really couldn't get a read on this guy. It didn't matter if I went along with him or against him. I just couldn't figure him out. Once again, he looked away from me for a few seconds. I wanted to ask what he kept looking at, but I really wanted to hear about the reflections. Oh, and why he wants me dead, and all that. He recomposed himself after taking a long, deliberate breath. If you were being anywhere near my level of importance, I would apologize for that outburst. But seeing as you're not, you won't be getting one. Okay. I couldn't tell if he was trying to flex on me, or if that's just how he talked to most people. I am a being that is capable of creating reflections of anything that exists within a certain limit. Thanks, that's vague and unhelpful. These reflections come, as you've most likely noticed, bearing opposing traits, such as Zack's scar, or how such a gentle man turned into one with such murderous intent. Was he really that great of a guy? I mean, he was nice and all, but I think you might be over-exaggerating just a bit. He was so grateful to you that he was planning on bringing a new gift basket to the motel every day he saw you, just so he could give you fresh gifts. I thought that was just a bit too nice for any human being alive, but it was just too wholesome. I couldn't bring myself to question it. But the cultists proved themselves to be as useful as most mortals tend to be, so I had to take matters into my own hands. The creature that you witnessed tonight is simply an extension of my being. I nodded along with everything he was saying, but the more he talked, the more questions I had. But I figured that the why to this entire endeavor is probably the most important part to hear. So I held my tongue, hoping he'd get to that. Well? I asked. Well, what? He responded in a way that made me feel like he was trying to be coy, but he failed miserably. Well, what? He'd really ruined the whole cool guy act that he started this off with. I thought about informing him of my ever-decreasing view of him as a person, but stopped myself, because that would be very rude. And I didn't want to give him another excuse to prolong this conversation too long. After all, as far as I was aware, my body was still lying sprawled out on the concrete. Not only that, but his extension, or whatever it was still out there with my coworkers. I held back a long, disgruntled sigh and asked my question. Why do you want me dead? What did I do? Ah, finally. An important question. I hate him. I really hate him, with everything that I am as a person. You see, Mason, it's not what you've done, it's what you'll do. He leaned back in his chair, trying to put forward an air of cool, though, due to my previously expressed low opinion of him, it had zero effect. Along with my ability to create reflections, I can see through all reflections. I can even see the flow of time itself in reverse, if I so choose, which is exactly what has led me to this point. You will make a decision that will end the lives of nearly every being in existence. The self-satisfied look on his face told me that he thought I should be devastated by the news, but I didn't believe it for a second. This guy sounds way too OP to having this much trouble killing me if he actually wanted to. Okay, what's the decision? I would tell you, but it hardly matters. You'll be put in a position where it will be the only option that you believe you have. He shifted into a more comfortable position. He clearly thought he held all the power in this conversation. By this point, I was completely over the sitting exposition machine, but I thought one more question couldn't hurt. Why is it so important to kill me now? Why not let me live my life up until the point where I'm about to make that oh-so-important decision and then kill me? Because I've been watching you for a long time now. So, I know all too well how hard you are to kill. How much you have to bleed. He tapped his temple right above his eye. The eye where my reflection sat looking back at me. I know what you are. And that's when it all clicked into place for me. He's telling the truth. I shot to my feet and announced, "Okay, I need to leave." His face fell from a look of smug superiority to one of shock. Wait. No! He looked away from me again and his brow furrowed in anger. Damn it. He sneered before turning back to me. Do you really think I'd let you just leave? I stood up, along with the countless rows of myself. I looked him dead in the eye, took a deep breath, and stated, "But I want to." Suddenly this guy was cast in a heavy yellow light that shined from behind me. I turned around to see that the general shape of a door appeared in the space a few feet away from me. The light grew brighter as the door slowly opened on its own. I whipped around and said, "Did you really think that you could make me stay here by telling me that I couldn't leave?" We shared a long, awkward moment of heavy eye contact before he responded. Perhaps. Well, screw you, I'm leaving. He reached out a hand to me and yelled, "Wait!" Pain spread across his face and his entire body tensed up. Let's call him Rory, for mirror and misery, which is exactly what I feel right now. Rory started convulsing and groaning in pain. Are you okay? I asked, unsure of if it would be appropriate to walk away. After nearly a minute, he finally started to settle down. His chest heaved as he breathed heavily. He sat up straight in his chair and started fixing his previously neat hair. Then his right eye exploded. I jumped back as blood shot across the room. His dark red blood oozed out of the now empty eye socket, leaking out onto the front of his white suit. He looked at me with disappointment ran across his face. I couldn't tell if he was feeling that way towards me or himself, but he didn't stick around to find out. "Alright, bye. Hopefully that," I gestured to his face, "situation gets sorted out." Then I turned and walked through the door. My eyes peeled open, fighting against the blood that had leaked over my face, which caused me to be temporarily blinded. That wasn't my biggest concern, though. As soon as I woke up, I realized that I couldn't breathe. A moment of panic went through me as I imagined that monster piercing along when it stabbed me with its claws. But don't worry, it wasn't nearly that bad. I turned my head to the side and coughed up a throatful of blood. "Yo!" JJ exclaimed. "Stop moving! It'd be real weird if I accidentally fingered your stomach." He chuckled to himself. "Hold still," Martina said, as my face was suddenly being smothered with a wet cloth. After a minute of gentle wiping, the blood was cleaned from my eyes. All the while, I felt JJ's surprisingly delicate fingers picking out all the shards of glass, only using the tweezers when picking out the incredibly small pieces. Once I was done, they wrapped my stomach and the top of my head in the heavy-duty bandages from our med kit. Now that I could sit up and see, I took in everything around me. All my coworkers were covered head to toe in small cuts and scrapes, which they were in the process of bandaging. There were new cracks in the ever-expanding web that ran through the lot. The tarp that had been covering the pool, because apparently the day shift hadn't taken the initiative to open the pool this morning, because the tarp was supposed to be stored in the laundry room, amateurs, was torn to shreds. Most of the scraps floated on the pool's surface, but some had been thrown out. I looked to Martina and asked, "What happened here?" She proceeded to explain all that happened after I passed out. Apparently after the brief scuffle that I had with the extension, Martina and Z, as clarified by Z, both figured out that whatever you did to the creature was reflected, hence why whenever I hit it, it felt like something was hitting back. At some point, JJ tried to football the problem away by tackling the creature. To the surprise of everybody, it was thrown off its feet, but in the direction JJ had come from, and according to them, it even seemed to shock the monster itself that had happened. So they acted like a children's soccer team and piranha'd the creature, which is where all the cuts came from. Being pushed and pulled in the opposite direction than it was expecting was all they needed to herd it over to the pool, where they pulled against it, which threw it right into the water. While it tried breaking free, the tarp got wrapped around it, and the harder it fought against the tarp, the tighter it got. And eventually, it just shattered. They assumed I had drowned, and that's its way of dying, which really undermined how threatening the creature seemed at first. But that kind of disappointment basically sums up Rory as a whole. And that's it. Now I was all caught up. Which all I took out of this was that somebody was now going to have to clean presumably sharp glass out of the pool. But I'm guessing that the death of his extension was what Rory was watching the entire time. And when it finally kicked the bucket was when his eye blew up. But that's just my theory. Also, I feel like I should just throw out there that I have no idea what he meant when he said he knew what I was. I don't know what he meant. I was more focused on when he said he watched me bleed. So now I have more questions than when we started talking. After that, Cora and Anna pulled up in their squad car, which is when Anna proceeded to freak out over all the blood and gore, even though she's seen stuff almost this bad before. When she had calmed down, they came over to check on us. We let them in, which caused her to freak out all over again when she saw me, which I thought was weird because she's definitely seen me in a worse state than this before. While that was happening, Court called for an ambulance. And really that brings you guys up to now. I'm currently holding up in a hospital a town over, because I'm banned from going to the local one, which is where I've been for the past few days. I've been sitting on posting this for a couple of days to give myself the proper amount of time to digest everything that Rory told me. I genuinely have no clue how my life will ever get to the point where I'll make a decision that will bring an end to all life. So if I do, sorry guys. I'm sure it will inevitably be an accident. I'm really clumsy, especially with my life choices, and I make a lot of those. But fingers crossed that doesn't happen for a long, long time, for all your sakes. But that also sounds like the future's problem, and I'd rather not dwell on that right now. I don't know when I'll update again. From these reliable reports, nothing strange has been happening at our sad, lonely motel while I've been in here. But until then, I'll see you all again someday.